Chapelhay from the 1950s onwards. On June the 6th, 1944, the Allied forces mounted the largest seaborne invasion in history, D-Day. Thousands of men from all over the world, including many from Weymouth, stormed the beaches of Normandy, eventually winning a decisive victory against the Nazis.
Americans came to Britain in 1942 following Pearl Harbor, once America had come into the war, and they were everywhere, but there was a large concentration of them in Dorset for training purposes on the south coast for D-Day. I reckon that there were probably at one stage about 250,000 American troops in Dorset.
Well, we used to help the American soldiers a great deal on anything really come to that. Whatever we could possibly put ourselves out to do, we did, because they were so kind to us that we didn't know really we were being kind to them. It was just an ordinary day of working and going down and doing something, you know, instead of playing up the bombed houses, and made a change to go down and help the Americans do all their loading and what have you. But they were very grateful. They were grateful. They couldn't thank us enough. After the war years, this wasn't that long ago, going back now, only what, say 5 years ago, we had an American come back from America down in Bedminster, which is just outside of Weymouth. And he said he was one that was went across from here to Omaha Beach and was lucky to get away with his life when they did the invasion on the beach. I mean, they were all wiped out. And he was saying that, you know, he zigzagged up across the beach because they were firing all these bullets and what have you. And he said, I was very lucky to make the beach to get up underneath the hills, so they were firing over the top. But he said there was hundreds and hundreds killed. And mostly all the Americans that went through Weymouth, funny enough, was killed.
For the people of Weymouth, now it was a relaxing of the steel grip that had held it for so long. The ever-present fear of sudden air attack had receded, and the all-embracing blackout did not seem so oppressive. It was Christmas 1944, and many a table in the town held a supplement to the Christmas fare, by kind permission of Uncle Sam, for the Americans were nothing if not generous.
VE Day was a lovely, lovely day. We celebrated that on Weymouth Promenade, and down by the Alexander Gardens they had all lovely tables put all the way around the gardens, and us youngsters and that, I mean, it was all, I mean, we never seen so much food in our lives. I mean, it was like, well, a happy day, all waving flags and singing and hugging each other, and it's just Bedlam, lovely.
In 1945, the last few evacuees returned home, and a huge farewell parade of Weymouth Civil Defence Services was held in Newstead Road. Tank traps and rusty barbed wire were removed from the beach to make way for Punch and Judy. On May the 8th, the day of the All Clear, 10,000 people blocked the esplanade outside the Gloucester Hotel to attend a service of thanksgiving. Those who remembered the First World War were about to face the same problems all over again, namely unemployment and housing. In the 6 years since the war began, over 7,000 homes in Weymouth had been damaged by air raids. 83 civilians lost their lives and countless more overseas. Families were ripped apart. Although the redevelopment of Chapelhay was a priority, disagreements over the council's plan rolled on for years. In the meantime, on Monday the 27th of April 1953, former Vicar of Holy Trinity Cecil Plaxton, now Archdeacon of Wiltshire, together with the Right Reverend W. L. Anderson, Lord Bishop of Salisbury, and the present incumbent Philip Sprent, gathered for the official opening of Holy Trinity School, which replaced the one destroyed during the Blitz.
It took an awful long time for the local council in Weymouth to get together and agree for a way to move past the Second World War, actually. which is why when you speak to a lot of people who were children during this period, they recall fondly playing in bombed out houses and doing all the things which we maybe wouldn't get away with doing today. But that was because there were lots of different voices, each of whom had a different idea of what was best for the area. And it wasn't until the 1960s that the damage that was inflicted on the area during the war was done away with, and the place that we see today grew up out of the rubble.
Back in 1950, Reverend Plaxton wrote a strongly worded letter to the parish magazine, describing the shocking state of dilapidation and decay in Chapelhay. The effect on the children of the parish is very bad, and we cannot wonder that hooliganism exists. It is difficult to understand when so many of our great Blitz cities have been cleaned up, while Chapelhay remains to rot. I am encouraged to hear reports of definite plans on foot to tackle this problem, and I hope it will not be long delayed. 4 years earlier, in 1946, the Western Gazette reported a big protest at Weymouth, when the Weymouth and District Ratepayers Association gathered at the Sydney Groves Memorial Hall to oppose council plans to rebuild Chapelhay from the ground up. A voice from the crowd called on members of the council to defend the plan. None did. Thus a resolution was moved to call upon them to modify the Chapelhay scheme, and consistent with a more suitable layout, to proceed with all speed to repair the repairable houses, both occupied and unoccupied. Eventually, Chapelhay Heights filled the site. Below them, the war-torn streets of Old Weymouth were cleared in 1961 to provide a site for the municipal offices.
I can't say I'm aware of the history particularly, apart from the fact that the bombing obviously took place and flattened the centre of Chapelhay. But what I think is really interesting is how that's actually shaped the place. It shaped the community, because the fact that all the new social housing was built there, it created a different kind of community, a very mixed community where you've got the little terraced houses and the semi-detached and the social housing. And I think that's one of the things that gives Chapelhay its sort of unique and special character, which all relates back, in fact, to the bombing, to the levelling of Chapelhay.
On April the 23rd, 1954, practically the whole of Weymouth turned out to watch as Weymouth Pavilion burnt to the ground.
The pavilion caught fire in April 1954 as a result of a painter's blow lamp. They were doing pre-season refurbishment and it caught fire. It was a most spectacular fire. I can just remember seeing it myself.
It was sad to see it go. Yet, when that was clear and there was just rubble left, I can remember a man in a white coat, and and the council didn't realise he was even doing it, but he was making a living out of it by parking cars on it and taking money for it. And because he was in a white coat and a peaked cap, he looked the part for it, and they never even knew he was doing it.
It was replaced by the current building in July 1960, but the glitz and glamour of the Edwardian age were gone forever. The war changed everything, Weymouth included. Rebuilding the town was one thing, but the emotional scars caused by the conflict were another matter.
When I had children, my husband and I decided that we wanted to move back to Weymouth because we thought it's a really great place to grow up. You know, I loved growing up here, and so did my children. But I also wanted to contribute to the community that I came from, which is Chapelhay, and I wanted to do something with the playground, which was sometimes a bit sad, a bit neglected. So what I did was I got a group of local people together and we turned it into a community garden, in the sense that we organised, and we still do organise, activities for local children and families. So the wonderful thing about this, in a way, is that the devastation of that area being flattened during the war, out of that devastation has grown a community garden, a community spirit, and lots of positive things.